Good evening. Great Britain is officially full. Today, new population growth predictions landed, and it will be game over for the UK if it's allowed to happen. We now have a higher population than France. France is more than double the size of us. The UK population is set to rise by just under 5 million people in the next 10 years, slightly less than 10 years, actually. There will be 72.5 million people crammed into our little island by mid-2032. And all of that will be down to mass immigration. How do we know? Well, the projected difference between domestic births and deaths is projected to be zero. So it's all immigrants. And that number will actually be higher. Mark my words, it will be higher, because every year we're told a figure for net migration, and then every year they revise it upwards. We had a net migration of 1 million people last year alone, didn't we? Labour have said that they want to build a load of houses.
We want homes on these sites within the first term of a Labour government. But these new large settlements must be built in the right place in partnership with local people. This is why an expert independent task force will be set up to help choose the right sites, and a list of projects will be announced within the first 12 months of government, so that we can start building the towns of the future within months and not decades.
1.5 million homes in 5 years. Let's say they double that to 3 million. That is still 2 million short of the number of people set to enter Britain in that time period. Let that sink in. So mass immigration will make us homeless or living in squalor. And you won't get social housing. Oh no, in parts of the UK, about 61% of social housing is occupied by non-Brits. Then we've got the NHS. There are currently 7.5 million people on an NHS waiting list. We can't get GP appointments. How much more money in taxes will you have to pay so millions of foreigners can clog up our NHS? Did you know that the Burj Khalifa, the world's largest building, cost the equivalent of 3 days and 11 hours of NHS spending to build that thing? So mass immigration will make us less healthy and quite possibly kill people. What about your taxes? Councils are looking at hiking council tax by 25% in some areas, and that's now. Never mind with 5 million more people here. What about your other taxes? 55% of households in Britain already claim more in benefits than they pay in tax. Shall we have a little look at some of the demographics, shall we? According to the latest census, there is an economic inactivity rate of 48% amongst Arabs, 40.8% amongst Pakistanis. And what countries do we think these millions of migrants will mostly be coming from? Mass migration will make us poorer. Schools. Mass immigration will mean children get a worse education. Dentists. Currently, prisoners get better dental care than the average member of the public. Look at this massive queue outside a dentist practice in Bristol. Yeah? You just tell me one of the things that stands out for you in all of that. Yeah, OK. Buckle up for much more of that, everybody. Mass immigration. It'll rot our teeth. And what about culture? Well, the East End's traditional pie and mash shops are closing. Tower Hamlets is now just 22% white British. But it's more than just the pie and mash shops, isn't it? 2/3 of rapes and sexual assaults in London are believed to have been committed by somebody who wasn't born in the UK. Let me put it this way, all right? If you went to Tokyo and you walked around and the majority of people that you saw there were visibly not Japanese, wouldn't you think that was a bit weird? And we are the Western capital for Sharia courts as well. While we're at it, we've got 85 of them. British culture and British way of life will be a thing of the past. And that's before I've mentioned that hotels full of illegal migrants are popping up in every town and city. They all, of course, get great healthcare, by the way. In fact, in Oxfordshire, asylum seekers get taxpayer-funded driving lessons. At every single opportunity, you, the British public, have voted to bring down immigration. Every single time, you have been lied to. The reality is this: at the current rate, future generations will be homeless, poor, unhealthy, uneducated, and will have more of an allegiance to a foreign land. What our politicians are doing to us is nothing short of treason. Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. Conservative MP Esther McVeigh, GB News presenter Alex Armstrong, and we've also, of course, got the wonderful journalist Jonathan Liss. Now, Esther, I'll put those population growth numbers there. If that's allowed to happen, Britain's finished, isn't it?
Well, I would be very strict on this. You're talking one in, one out. I'd be doing on legal migration, which we can be in charge of. I'd be looking for a moratorium until we can build the houses you need, get the hospitals you need, whatever, get the integration you need, get the culture. So I would be doing a moratorium on that.
And on the illegal, stop immigration.
I would have it for a period of time, whilst we look at what we can cope with, whilst we look at assimilation. Yes, I would, and I think I'd call it an emergency. Call other things emergency. I'd say we need to do that
like
because
Donald Trump's Muslim ban. Figure out what the hell's going on.
Because actually, to set a numerical target actually would probably be far more difficult to hit. Because other people would have exceptions, exemptions, other family members, reasons people could come in. So if you said for a period of time. This is what we'll...
All right, so we've got the projections. Those projections are absolutely stark. OK, so what would you do about it? Net zero migration? Do an estimate of a moratorium?
I think, actually, we have to go further because I think there's already too many people here. We can't build enough homes. The hospitals are crowded. As you saw, dentists are full up. We actually need to have negative migration for a little while the country grows and copes and builds for the people that are already here, let alone worrying about bringing more people. Because net immigration, it also means that you still... Well, I think we do need to have some sort of deportation for illegal people living in the country, for foreign criminals living in our country. Yes, I do. But I also think we need to let some people leave.
The last one.
Jonathan, we need to let some people leave here. I was born and bred in London. I can't afford a home. There's plenty of people who can't afford to buy a home. There are not enough jobs.
Which legal migrants do you want to see gone?
Illegal migrants.
I said which legal migrants?
I didn't say I want to see legal migrants gone, but people leave the country all the time. I said we don't always need to replace everybody that leaves. As Patrick says, plenty of them are unemployed, and we don't need to be filling up the country with more unemployed people. What we need is for the country to recover from the mass immigration experiment that the last successive 30 years of governments have done and actually catch up. We're talking about building houses and homes and hospitals equivalent to 9 times of Manchester, Birmingham. This is insane. We cannot continue. We need a break.
What's your reaction, Jonathan, to those population growth predictions there?
I think that they look completely normal. And, what was really...
Where does it end?
We're speechless, completely normal. No, they're not. It is too much to cope with.
It's your opinion, Esther. I think
and I'd say most of the public.
I'm not expecting to find a lot of fans on this channel, for sure. And that doesn't mean that my position is not entirely right. And that
it's not.
You have... the thing that was most striking to me is that you have basically a 0-0 deaths and births. And actually, you might find you have a falling birth rate. And you have countries like, you mentioned Japan. I'm not entirely sure what you meant by that comment, by the way, about people looking visibly non-Japanese. I don't know what it means to look visibly British, but we'll park that to one side. But countries like Japan, they have a stagnant economy, and they actually need immigration. And a lot of countries need immigration. And, you can make very valid arguments in this country about needing to train people to be doctors and to sort of man our public services. I completely get that. But it's not either or. We need immigration.
Let's talk about economy for a second, because we never talk about GDP per capita. We always talk about GDP. GDP per capita is down. People are as poor or as wealthy as they were, in 2007? Is that the kind of country we want? Do you want to see that continue to go?
Policy.
No, it's not just. No. It's per capita. We are poorer per capita. It's not just the economy has grown since then, but people in general can't get jobs. They can't get homes. We're having less children because we can't have the sustainable households.
People aren't building. The governments haven't been building homes.
But you're not going to build enough anyway to say this is what you're calling normal.
The other point, Patrick, is that you're making was that it seemed to be presupposing that you'd only have one migrant per house. And actually, one of the reasons that legal migration figures are so high and have been so high under your government, Esther, is that you have people bringing their dependents. And the last government stopped that. And now we have an even bigger crisis in the care sector, for example, because people aren't coming at all because they're not allowed to bring their dependents anymore.
To be fair, what Rishi did there, stopping particularly student dependents...
We're seeing universities having to ditch staff because they can't support themselves anymore.
But they should never have been selling migration.
Universities are one of the biggest sector in the country.
Well, it shouldn't be, because it was like a giant Ponzi scheme. It was selling migration rather than education, and that's what they were selling to this country. So actually, Rishi was right, and that, which would have stopped in January, you'll see those figures come down straight away. But separating out what we do with legal migration, what we're interested, and then illegal migration is where they should be. And I agree with Rupert Lowe, who would have said, detainment and then deport. But what the Conservative brought in was the Rwanda scheme, because you've got to send them to a third country. Both Labour and Reform didn't want the third country. That is the solution.
I mean, we also also could do what Donald Trump is doing and say, hey, by the way, if you don't take them back, we're going to put tariffs on you. We're going to revoke visas. Was it Douglas Carswell? Douglas Carswell suggested, and it was a great suggestion, said if the Pakistani government don't want to take back Pakistani illegal immigrants and foreign criminals, then let's revoke visas.
Jonathan, just on the birth rate, do you not think that maybe people aren't having kids because people are getting into their mid-30s and they haven't got anywhere to live, they can't afford a house, they feel as though their wages are being artificially driven down.
And there's no childcare. Life is rubbish for people, absolutely. And whose fault is that? So is it the government that's been in office for 6 months, or is it the government that was in office for 14 years?
So do you think 5 million more people is going to make that better or worse, Jonathan?
I think that it really depends on who those people are and
let's have a look at what the
economy is looking like generally. Look, Patrick, you know, I presume you are greatly in support of Brexit, which means that the government is now completely in charge of who can come into this country.
Yeah, and the government.
The governments can put all kinds and have sort of set up a point scheme, and they say we need these particular skills, and we actually have a lot of sectors that desperately need people to come from all parts of the world. People are not coming here. Legal migrants are not coming here to be economically inactive. That's not how it works.
No, you
but it is how it works. I showed you a stat. About 40% of people in some communities
people who are coming here are not coming here to be able to fend off the state.
So I don't agree with that at all. You can't say, oh, we don't want to do those jobs and we'll ship people in from other sides of the world. It's brain drain for them. It's completely wrong. We have to do those jobs. You can't pick and choose. We all need to get our shoulder to the wheel.
I said that people need to be doing jobs as well. This is not either or.
The biggest issue, and I guess the biggest expenditure for everybody, is a house and is a mortgage. And when millions more people are coming in every day, and it's a supply and demand situation, and the demand is much bigger than the supply cannot go above a certain amount, and that's why you need immigration figures going down.
On top of that, Esther, we just saw the Labour government killed the Tories' plan to have British citizens put first at the front of the queue for social housing, which is exactly...
That's not true.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Alex.
Angela Rayner killed that policy.
This is not non-British people. The figure that you were quoting earlier, about 76%, that is simply people who are not born here. That's people who became British citizens maybe 25 years ago. Boris Johnson...
No, that's not what I was talking about. Jonathan, that wasn't what I was discussing. Jonathan, I was saying there was a policy that Rishi Sunak's government wanted to bring in, which would have put British citizens at the top of the social housing ladder because they are paid into the system and deserve it, and illegals or foreigners at the bottom, which is where it should be, right? Well, Angela Rayner killed that.
Just quickly on this, because I'd like to just get in on this one, because I think that there's the real serious risk of massive civil unrest if this goes ahead, because people have to have voted for, well, by the time this comes into force, if these population predictions are true, for like the best part of 25, 30 years, consistently for lower immigration. And they would have found themselves consistently being lied to and deceived on that. And I think that could lead to a bit of trouble, really, with ordinary British citizens. I mean, is it not really just in any government's interest to bring that down? Are you worried about the idea now that, you know, you're obviously an MP yourself, that people will just, like, not believe what MPs say when it comes to...
I've always been probably somebody who's slightly more vocal on keeping immigration levels down. And I think for a long period of time, people didn't want to talk about it, because should you talk about it, people say, oh, you are racist.
We've been talked about nothing else for 30 years.
No. And now it's more at a crisis point. And people are now talking about it, and probably in a slightly more inflamed way, because it is now more of a critical sort of crisis point. So we do need to have immigration down. And as I said, I'd look at it as a moratorium for the legal migration. It is important that we do that, because you are right, lots of people are concerned about schooling, about going to the doctors, getting to the dentist, about buying a house, having a job, and they're saying my standard of living is much more reduced, and I don't want that.
And we are the most tolerant country on earth. I guarantee you, no other country in Western Europe, Jonathan, would have put up with what we've put up with for the last 10 or 20 years.
Well, how many Syrian refugees did Germany let in?
Well, Germany's suffering the consequences of that, Jonathan. Seriously suffering the consequences.
It's not true that we've done more in other countries. It's just simply not true. And can I just put this on to Esther? We have talked about migration week in, week out for decades. It's just not true that we can't have a conversation about migration. We are having it all the time.
No, we are now.
No, we were before as well.
We're being ignored. I think that's the problem. We talk about it, we vote against it, and nobody listens. And I think the British public are at wit's end with being ignored on this issue.
Well, we will see what happens going forward, won't we?